Hello, I'm Stephanie Anderson, and I love designing books. From picking out what fonts I want to use, if I want to have decorative accents for the page breaks, or if I want to have fancy graphics on the chapter title pages, I love it all. Whether it's a fiction book, a nonfiction book, or a children's illustrated book, I love interior formatting. As a book designer with Alt19 Creative, I have been working in the book world for over 10 years now. I have formatted thousands of print books and ebooks, not only for publishers, but for tons of indie authors as well. Today, I am going to share with you some of my secrets. And what we're going to talk about are 10 things to know about book formatting. Before we get into those 10 things to know about book formatting, we're going to go over a few other things. First thing is whether you're a traditionally published author or you're seeking to be traditionally published, or if you're an indie author. Typically, traditionally published authors really have no say in their formatting. The publisher is going to take care of that for you. They're going to decide what font, what graphics, if any, and how they want your book to look. However, as an indie author, you get to create your own book cover and formatting. So you get to make those decisions in what font you want to use, what your line spacing is, whether you want to include graphics for scene breaks or on your chapter title pages. You also get to decide the order of your front matter and back matter, and just the overall look of your book, and how it correlates with your overall brand as an author, as well as series branding. So what exactly is book formatting? All right, you probably typed up your manuscript in Word or maybe Google Docs or some other word processing software. You probably typed it out on a letter-sized paper, so it's currently 8.5 by 11, maybe with 1-inch margins. You may have set it in Times New Roman or Courier or another font that you prefer to use when typing. So book formatting is taking that letter-sized manuscript and turning it into the end product that is actually going to get printed and bound and topped off with that cover. So for book formatting, whether you do it yourself, whether you hire a formatter or typesetter or book designer to do it for you, the process is basically taking that manuscript and putting it into the trim size, your book size, whether it's 6 by 9, 5.5 by 8.5, 5 by 8, whichever size you go with, setting the margins properly. As you will learn in the 10 things to know, we're going to talk about the different margin sizes. Your inner margin needs to be wider than all the other margins to allow for that spine. And then setting your font. What font is best to use for books? What is the best line spacing to use? How about indents or block paragraphs versus indented paragraphs? What about chapter titles? What about page headers? Where you typically have, for novels, author name on the left-hand side, book title on the right-hand side. And for nonfiction books, you typically have book title on the left-hand side and chapter titles on the right-hand side. Do you want your chapters to always begin on a right-hand side page? If that's the case, you're going to have some blank left-hand pages in there, and you need to include those blank pages in your PDF. Otherwise, the printer will not print a blank page there. So these are all the little components that go into formatting, and we're going to delve into these deeper in our 10 things to know. All right, next, formatting is twofold. When you have your manuscript that you've typed up, whether it's you, your book formatter, or designer, they're going to take that manuscript and convert it into two different processes. You're going to have your ebook and you're going to have your print book. All right. Now, there are two different types. Well, there's actually several different types of ebooks, but for novels, the ones you only really need to worry about are EPUB and Mobi. And Mobi is actually becoming non-existent, except because Amazon is no longer accepting it for certain books. But you will still need Mobi files if you use sites such as Booksprout or BookFunnel to send out Kindles, which is a Mobi, to readers. But in this video, we're not really going to get into ebook formatting. And to be honest, it would take another presentation just to talk about ebooks alone. Then the next part of book formatting is getting it into a print book. Well, first of all, if you're an indie author, you need to decide, do you want to do a print book? Well, I love having paperbacks available. I love being, and in some cases, if it's a really special book, a hardback. I love being able to give paperback giveaways and sending them to book bloggers so they can take pictures for Bookstagram. So if you don't think you want to include print books in your publishing arsenal, don't discount it, because believe it or not, a lot of people still prefer those print books. However, if you are the type of author that's looking to do rapid releasing and print books, they just may not be a part of your arsenal that you offer. But if they are, be sure to stay tuned as we're going over those 10 things to know about book formatting. So the next question that I ask if you're an indie author and you definitely want to include print as part of your publishing arsenal, is whether you want to do it yourself or hire it out. Again, I'm not going to get into the details on hiring it out. At the end of today's presentation, I am going to offer you a couple of options if you do choose to hire it out, but the majority of this presentation is going to talk about DIY. And I am going to help you DIY the best way possible. So here we go. Let's get started with the 10 things you need to know about book formatting. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about in the 10 things to know about book formatting is software. Okay, there are tons of options available, some free, some cost. This is just a handful of some of the software that you can get out there. Vellum, which I'm sure you've heard of, it's very popular in the indie world. However, it is for Mac computers only. Yes, you can run it by doing Mac in the cloud. So there's that option if you decided you want to do Vellum. Now, as a professional, Vellum is a wonderful tool if you are strictly doing ebooks. So if your publishing plan is just to send out ebooks, rapid release them all the time, then getting Vellum is kind of a no-brainer. However, if you also plan on doing print books, I do not recommend using Vellum for print. Yes, it will do print, and yes, it does an okay job, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. Right? And that goes with all the other tools on this page as well. Scrivener, Readsy has a book formatter, Draft to Digital has one, Kindle Create. I've heard Kindlepreneur is coming out with one sometime in 2021, so it'll be interesting to see what it offers. But the thing about all of these different pieces of software is that there is limited customization with them. And you're really kind of stuck with the templates that they provide. So how can we get fancier with our ebooks and print books? Well, you can do pretty much whatever you want in Microsoft Word. It's a little tricky sometimes, like if you want to do images that bleed off the page, but it's possible. But the absolute most perfect software available for book formatting is Adobe InDesign. It was built for this type of work. MS Word, it's a word processor, all right? Adobe InDesign is a page layout program. Both of these will allow us to customize our books to our heart's content. InDesign just takes it another level and makes it easier as long as you know what you're doing. Now, think about walking into a bookstore and look at all the books. Let's say a Barnes & Noble's, a two-story Barnes & Noble's where we have books upstairs and book downstairs, every kind of book you can imagine. I guarantee you 99% of the books in a Barnes & Noble have been formatted using Adobe InDesign. It is the leading software for book formatting as far as software that provides the most professional results. It's what traditional publishers use. So my philosophy as an indie author, I want my print books to rival what a traditional publisher's print books look like. So how do we do that? We use the same software that they do, Adobe InDesign. I guarantee you, traditional publishers, they're not using Vellum. All right, so now we're going to move on to item 2 in our 10 things to know about book formatting. And to go back to number 1 for a minute, most of this presentation is going to talk about Adobe InDesign for book formatting, but a lot of the information we cover is going to be relevant for Microsoft Word or for other book formatting tools. So number 2, if you know what you're doing in Adobe InDesign, I'm going to throw that in there, then you can have an amazingly bougie book. And we're going to take a look at a couple of samples in a minute. But just know, if you're intimidated by the thought of formatting in Adobe InDesign, don't fret. Because remember, when we reach that number 10, I have something special just for you. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at a lot of different layouts, ranging from children's illustrated books to simple novels, to fancier novels, to a cookbook, everything, you name it, I'm going to show that to you, and everything that I'm showing to you was created, you guessed it, in Adobe InDesign. Okay, we're going to take a look at several samples here. I have gone through my entire database of jobs and picked out some ones that, from simple to complex, that I think you would be interested in seeing. And the reason why I am doing this is because I really want you to see the potential that InDesign has on book formatting. All right. So this first one, this is actually an anthology. And doing an anthology in InDesign is wonderful. InDesign allows us to have multiple book documents that we can merge into one. So each individual story could be its own book document. And it makes for easy work to work with each individual author, especially if they have edits. All right, so another thing that we can do in Adobe InDesign is we can have pages that extend. It actually extends beyond the page. So when it goes to print, it gets trimmed down. So this black script background will extend all the way to the edge of the page. So I'm just going to scroll through and point out a couple of things. You'll notice that typically, one of the first pages you have in your book is a title page or a half title page, also known as a signature page. This one just has a title page. I'm sure some of the other examples I show you will have signature pages, so I'll point those out to you. Then after the title page on the left-hand side, we have our copyright page, and then front matter begins. All right, so for this book, we have a note from the editor, and then we go into the table of contents. And then we go into the actual stories. And so we utilize the black pages as well as some sort of artistic element when it came to each story. So for this particular story, this was a steampunk story. And so we used cogs. And so this is basically the title page for this story. And then we get into the story where on the chapter title pages, we repeated the cog design. And then we'll go ahead and scroll through real quick. Towards the end of each book, we were able to put in the About the Author page with a lovely author photo and then links for the author. Then comes the next story, which we repeated the same thing, except we switched out the little decoration with the way your title is, and you can get fancy with your chapter titles, all right? So for this particular book, we utilized this kind of moon and star background that was kind of faded out. And we repeated that for each chapter, and then we have the chapter number. And for this one, the chapter titles were basically the character's name because this was like a dual POV book. And of course, all right, so we're going to close that one out. And this one is just a simple simple fiction book. And just to show you that you don't have to be incredibly fancy, we just used one little element on her chapter title pages that was actually something similar to what she had on her cover. So what I like using InDesign for is that I can really make the cover and the print book cohesive. Because to me, you want a cohesive book product. So if you look on the outside, the same theme and elements carry on in the inside, whether it's utilizing the font that you used on your cover for your chapter titles, a similar graphic, or whatnot. All right. Then another nonfiction book. This is actually a memoir. And, InDesign makes it super easy to add decorative elements. And it makes it super easy to do image wraps, so where the text wraps around the image. And it makes it super easy to do pull quotes. All right. Moving on. This is in the world of some romance and fantasy books and books of that nature. There are a lot of authors who will reach out to me and say, Stephanie, I want black pages. Well, this is a black page. And you can't really tell in the PDF, but there is actually a constellation map in the background here. And it was really appropriate for these stories. And so we utilize the black pages throughout, not every page, because yes, it would be hard on the eyes to read white text on a black background. But for all these kind of fun front matter pages, it is possible. And then for the first page where the chapter title is, we utilize the black pages. So again, here is the constellation. And then when we get into the actual book, we have a different constellation map. Each character was assigned a constellation. And so each character got their constellation map. So Ariana, I can't remember, I think was Sagittarius maybe. And then when we scroll through to the next character, which was Bolton, he was Aries. So this is a star chart with Aries in the constellation. And another fun thing we can do, and I'm going to scroll through this particular book until I show you, is that oftentimes in novels and other books, we do text messaging. So I like to do cool ways to show text messages. So here's one. All right. So this particular book, we used the constellation symbols to designate each person. So Ariana, this is a symbol for whatever her constellation was. And I'm going to show you a couple more areas that we can see the text messages really repeat. So here's some more. So InDesign makes it real fun to add this kind of extra elements. All right. And this is another one just with the black pages. So I just wanted to show you a little bit more and how fancy we can get with it. And here is another nonfiction book. And it just shows you what we can do with nonfiction, where we have multiple heading levels. We have bulleted lists and block quotes and numbered lists. Doing these types of books, oh, it's just so much easier in InDesign. Is another nonfiction book. And you can't really see it that much on screen, but there is a brick pattern here. And everything about this book was pretty much mimicked from the cover. This was the way the title was done on the cover, and the cover had this brick pattern, and this is the way her author name was done on the cover. So we carried that theme throughout, and we set our other titles and chapter titles in a similar look as to how the title was done. And remember when I mentioned that some books have a half title page or what's known as a signature page? This one does. So when you open up the book, this is what you see, and it's called a signature page because if you're at a book signing or you're signing books to ship to people who have ordered them from your website, traditionally, this is the page that you would sign. It doesn't have anything but the title. So if you plan on doing print books that you will sign and ship out, or you do a lot of events where you sell a lot of books there, I would highly recommend adding that half title page, that signature page, just so you'll always have a lot of space to sign notes. All right, so again, here is the brick pattern, and then we have little hearts repeated. And again, these are just elements that she had on the cover. So, and then she had some poems that she wanted highlighted in a special way. So we did them on gray pages with the little white hearts running along the sides. And here's another one. And the hearts were wrapped all the way around. And another one. And let me think, I think in the back we may have done some special things. Just showing you all the different things that are possible. Yeah, so that gives you a good idea. Here is a simple novel, well, not simple, a fancy novel where we used an image, and it's very transparent, so it's probably only about 25% of the image showing through. So it's not really going to deter a person from reading. So that's key, is that whatever fancy stuff you want to add, you want to make sure you can still read the text, because that is the main point of a print book. We want it to be read. We can't fill it with a whole bunch of fancy stuff if they can't read it. So the key is yes, you can use all these decorative elements, but you better make sure that your text is readable. And then fun little scene breaks for palm trees. Here was a fun one. I have had the privilege of working on a ton of different types of books, but this one here was probably one of the most unique, and as a designer, it was definitely one of the funnest. So this book was called Love Spells, and yes, it did actually have some love spells in it. So I'm going to scroll through a couple of pages. We had, let's see, 7 different chapters, and each chapter was assigned a certain color. So this one was a pink. Chapter 2 was blue. Chapter 3 was orange. Chapter 4 was a purple. Chapter 5 was kind of a forest green. Chapter 6 was more of a teal green. And Chapter 7 was more of a reddish pink. So here is Chapter 1. So as you can see, we utilized pink elements throughout. So we had some faded out designs on the background that were pink. Everything was pink. Chapter 2 was blue. So as we scroll through, you can see all the blue elements. Yeah, see here we get into some of the spells. And the cool thing about this book was basically each page was unique. The fun part was that the author said, do whatever you want, make it fun, and that's what we did. A nonfiction book. This book was 8 by 10, right, which is something different that you may not used to be seeing. And it is different in that it was set up in a column layout. When we have an 8 by 10 page, and we have a long block of text that fills this page. So if this wasn't set in columns and that text went in a long block, it's really hard to read. That's why newspapers have columns. That's why magazines typically use columns. So if we go any larger than 6 by 9, it's probably best to set it up in a column format. And guess what? InDesign makes it super easy to do column format. And see that InDesign makes it easy where we can do full page images as backgrounds. And this book, I'm going to scroll through to a certain area because we have some recipes. So InDesign, if you're doing a cookbook, InDesign makes it super. I would not do a cookbook in anything but InDesign. InDesign was made for it. So for the recipes, we had a picture on the left-hand side. We have our ingredient list set as a bulleted list. And then we have our directions set up as a number list. Then we have bulleted notes down below, and then a little call out to see this recipe in action with the web address for her YouTube channel. And, tons of pictures, color, And then an index. InDesign makes it really easy to do an index. If you have already hired an indexer to maybe mark up your Word document, and your Word document is full of index markers, those index markers do get imported into InDesign, making your index easy to produce. Now, a note on indexes. Indexes is something you definitely want to leave to a professional index. And yes, those can cost. However, if your index is really simple, you only have a handful of words, such as this one, that you want to put in the index, it can be done easily as well. But it's where you get into a more complicated index that has multiple levels and see this index marker instead of here. You just really want to hire a professional for a very complex index. All right, here is a book. This one is 11 by 8.5, and it is a children's book about the game of squash, not the vegetable. And this one was really fun to do because, again, we got to be really creative with it. And this was printed through Ingram Spark, and it was a hardcover. And Ingram Spark is really the only POD that I have found that will print that 11 by 8.5 size. Yes, others will do 8.5 by 11, but they will not do 11 by 8.5, which is this vertical format. And it wasn't until probably 3 years ago or so did Ingram Spark even add it to their arsenal. So I'm really glad they did. I know the reason why a lot of other printers don't do it. It's just a little bit more complex in that they need to print on bigger paper in order to trim it down. But I am so happy with that Ingram Spark got this. It is allowing indie authors to utilize this size. So again, everything was done in InDesign, and like the other ones, because we have wide pages, we broke it down into columns. And this one we didn't do columns, but we have a narrow column of text thanks to this picture here, and thanks to a pretty wide outside margin. And InDesign makes it super easy to draw arrows and put them however you want, and create unique little boxes for your text. Fun little graphics, fun little bullet points, circles. And so all this was done in InDesign. And we are almost done. We have 2 more things. This is a children's book series. These particular authors, they do paperbacks. They also do board books. They have the board books. They used to have the board books printed in China, and now they have them printed in the US because they were able to get their supply up to make it economical to order in the US. You really have to print a lot to beat printing prices from China. And this particular book, it may look strange to you, but this book was printed using an offset press where we had to have the trim lines and everything. So InDesign makes it super easy to do any of those special print jobs that we need done if we are doing offset press. So this is just a children's book. And this particular foundation, Max Rhymes Foundation, they do a ton of different types of books related to their children's series. They also have these activity books, and all of these were done in InDesign. So we're going to get into some of the activities in just a little bit. So we have some coloring pages, we have some worksheets, a bunch of different things. And a lot of these were using, I did a combination of InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop to create these books. Okay. All right, that's it for our samples. So we are moving on. All right, for this next couple of slides, we're going to work a little bit differently. We're actually going to work and show you the material directly in InDesign. Numbers, so give them to me. So what do you mean by numbers? All right, we're talking about margins, font size, line spacing, and indents, and something that I probably should have included, but since we're working directly in InDesign, we can add it here, and that is book size. All right, so we're going to talk about each one of these. I'm going to show you an InDesign template and show you each one of these and how it is set up. The one thing that we're not going to spend a lot of detail on is the font size, because that really depends on several different things. So what font size should you pick? Well, honestly, that is a loaded question because there's a lot of factors to consider when choosing what your font size needs to be. The first one is, what is your trim size? Okay, if you're doing a 6x9 book, you could do 11 point, 12 point. If your audience is maybe more elderly, you can maybe even go up to 14 point without it being a large print book. All right, a 5x8 book size, you probably do not want to do a 12 point font. You want to go with an 11 or even a 10. All right, another thing to consider is, what is your word count? If you have a book that's over 100,000 words and you're doing a 5x8, you probably want to do a 10-point font. If you're doing a 6x9 and you have over 100,000 words, you probably want to do a 11-point font. All right. What is your genre? All right. So your genre can, it may be normal to have a small font, or if the genre is more targeted towards seniors, they probably would prefer a larger font. And then that's the next one. Who is your target market? That's pretty self-explanatory. The older we get, the harder it is for us to read, and we want larger fonts. I am reaching that age where I need those little bifocals built into my glasses, and I am thankful for larger fonts, even though I still fight it because I don't want to think I'm getting old. Okay, what is your page count goal? So if your goal is for your book to be at least 200 pages and you only have 40,000 words, there's ways we can tweak the font size to make that happen. So if you have a certain page count goal, your font size is going to determine, your page count goal is going to determine what font size you need. And then what font are you using? Not all fonts are created equal. Some actually are bigger than others at the same point size. And later in this presentation, we're going to go over several different fonts that are all set to 12 point, but they all look different. All right, so let's go back to our list here, and we are going to talk about all of these things: the book size, the margin. We're not going to worry about font size since we already talked about it, but we are going to talk about line spacing and indents. And look, since we're working on InDesign, we can quickly lowercase rs there, so we don't see my mistake. Okay, first and foremost, every single job I start in InDesign, every single book project I do starts with one thing, and that is a template. And at the end of this presentation, I am going to tell you how you can get my template, because it will save you a lot of time. If I do a children's book, I start with this template. If I do a cookbook, I start with this template. If I do a nonfiction book, you guessed it, I start with this template. This template is a culmination of years and years of work that I've done in InDesign, and I tweak it occasionally to make it better. Maybe InDesign adds a new feature and I want to incorporate that into the template. Whatever. It is a constantly evolving template, and first glance, it may look a little simple, but it really isn't. I have done so much in the background of this template that it will save you a ton of time with your book formatting. All right, so let's go to our list that we mentioned. I have it on my other screen, so if you give me a moment, I am going to pull it up. Actually, it's right here. So first off, we're going to talk about book size. All right, so the template is set to 6x9, but the beauty is it's easy to change in InDesign. All right, now the reason why I say it's easy to change in InDesign, I should add, if you were using this template, or if you were using another template that is set up using master pages, or if you set up your book document using master pages, if you did not set up your book document using master pages, and you have to change your book size during the process, it's not going to be as easy as if you used my template or another template that has master pages, or you use master pages yourself. Master pages are essential, and it's going to be another topic in upcoming. All right, so book size. So this template is set to 6x9. All right, so if we look at it, these are all our master pages. We have a chapter title page, we have a header page, we have blank pages, and there's some other pages that we won't get into. Right now, we're just going to worry about the chapter title pages and the header pages. All right, so this is 6x9, and you want to do a 5x8. So whenever you start a new formatting job, the first thing you want to think is, what book size is this going to be? So if your template comes in 6x9, what we're going to do to get this into 5x8 is we're going to go to File, Document Setup. But before we do anything, you'll notice that the width and height is right here, and you may be inclined to go in and just put 5x8 here. Well, let's go ahead and do that and click on OK. Let's see what happens. Oh no, our text frames, they're not set to our page size. You know, my type is going to go over the page. Why is that? Because we're going to undo that. We didn't select the proper way to change the book size if we want. Hold on, let me undo this to the certain point. All right, there we go. We're back to 6x9. To properly change your document size, if you already have all the master pages set up, is to come down here where it says Adjust Layout. All right, so we're going to click on Adjust Layout. Then we're going to change it to 5x8. And everything else we're going to keep the same. We want to keep our margins the same, and we do not want to adjust the font size, and we do want to tell it to adjust the locked content. And just by going to Adjust Layout, it's going to adjust all our text frames that we have on the page. All right. Now, the other thing that we were going to mention are margins. And here are my margins. All right. So we have a top margin of 0.9. We have a bottom margin of 0.75, an inside margin, which is our gutter, 0.875 and an outside margin of 0.625. I use these margins pretty much for everything. Certain books, I will adjust the top margin occasionally, and I will adjust the bottom margin occasionally. If I have a long book, I'm talking like 150,000 words or more, I may adjust this outside margin to be 0.5, but I stick to 0.625 because I have this thing. If I'm reading a paperback and I'm holding a paperback, I'm going to have my thumbs in those outside margins. I want to be able to fit my thumbs and not cover text. So if we keep our outside margin to be about 0.625, our thumbs are always going to be clear of text. So that's my theory. Now, for the inner margin, 0.875 is a good universal size, no matter your page count. All right. And this size really prevents a spine from breaking when you open a book. You really do not want a narrow inner margin. Okay, you don't want to make people angry that they have to really open the book and really press it down to read that text. You want that text to be completely clear of that gutter. So 0.875 is a good number to use for your inside margin. I never go down. I never go lower than that. And honestly, I never go higher. It's usually always 0.875 no matter what book I do. All right, so that's about our margins. All right, so going back to book size, we entered 5x8 and adjust layout. And using this method, InDesign automatically resets our text frames so that they fit within our margins for that 5x8 size. Okay. All right. So book size, check. Margins, check. Font size. We've talked about line spacing. Okay. So let's come here. We're just going to say chapter 1, and we are going to assign this chapter title. We're just going to say this is our chapter title, and I am just going to drop in some placeholder text. Well, InDesign usually will fill with placeholder text. Let's add a couple of pages here. All right, and now we're going to try to fill with placeholder text. All right, it's not cooperating. So give me 1 second and let me fill in some text for us to play with. All right, so I just went to a text generator site, and now I'm going to drop in the text. All right, so if you set up your InDesign document properly, it will continue to add pages to your document. Now, I'm going to undo that because I'm going to show you, there was the text that it initially added that I could not find. All right, so the template comes with a title page, a copyright page, a table of contents, the blank page, and then here chapter 1 starts. And then there's really nothing else in the template. And you might say, oh, you know what? How is that helpful for me? Because there's a lot of behind the scenes things. And the thing is when you add text, InDesign will automatically flow it to as many pages that are needed, right? So that's the great thing about InDesign, that it will flow. However, if you don't know what you're doing in InDesign, it's kind of tricky to get that page text to flow automatically. So be sure you stay tuned for the classes that I have for InDesign just for you. Okay, so we are going to talk about line spacing, but first I am just going to set some of these other, let's do a couple of things to get our text ready so we can talk about line spacing. And we don't want these pages, but this is a good thing to look at. Formatting books, there's one thing you definitely do not do, and that is have blank lines in between indented paragraphs. All right. The general rule is that if you want to do block paragraphs, now block paragraphs is where we do not have indents. So let's say we're moving the indents here, and we just have a line space in between paragraphs. That's called block formatting. For novels, I do not recommend it. And to be perfectly honest, if I see a book that I want to read and it was set up in block paragraphs, I will not read it. It bothers me. It's harder to read. I have all those pauses, those mega pauses in between paragraphs. My eyes do not flow through the text the same way. Now, if you're doing a nonfiction book that is really heavy on information, those pauses are good. And so it's okay to set up block paragraphs, but never indent them as well. So this is a big no-no. It's either or, okay? So we are going to delete our paragraphs so we do not have to worry about doing a cardinal sin on our formatting, all right? Now, you may say, why is all this text lower? Well, this is just how text comes in with InDesign. We have to actually set our master pages on these other pages because right now they all have our B chapter title master assigned. So that's just a quick little fix. We're just going to select all those pages and we're going to assign a new master. And so now they're going to have our headers, our headers up at the top. Now you may say, but why does it say author name and book title chapter 1? We'll get into that a little bit later. All right, so here is our basic text. Now, what is line spacing and what do we need to know about it? All right, I am going to do a couple of things. All right, line spacing is what it sounds like. It's line spacing. It's how much space is in between our lines. All right, so what is the rule for line spacing? We're going to come back over here and we're going to type out our little rule right here. The rule for line spacing is that it needs to be 3 to 5 points larger than the chapter text. All right, so we go back to our template. Here is our chapter text. Our chapter text is set to 11 points, and right now our line spacing is set to 22. We definitely don't want it to be 22. So if we go back to that rule of 3 to 5 points larger, so if we're using an 11-point font, 3 points larger, I can do math, is 14. All right, so this is what 14 line spacing looks like with an 11 point. Okay, now I am not a big fan of really tight line spacing, so I will only use that 3-point line spacing if I really am trying to get the page count down. All right, so I typically use 4 because to me it allows the text to give a little bit of breathing room. And if you're really trying to push the page count to more pages, you can go up to the 5. Okay, so let's look at those compared to each other. Let me do a quick little thing. All right, so we're going to take this paragraph, we are going to set it to 14, so that's 3 points larger. We're going to take this paragraph and we're going to keep it at 15, and then we're going to take this paragraph and make it 16. So that's the difference. This is 3 points larger than our font size, this is 4 points larger than our font size, and this is 5 points larger than our font size. In certain situations, we can go higher than 5 point, and that is my rule is if you are using a sans serif font, okay, and you need it, first of all, I don't typically use sans serif fonts. I will never use sans serif fonts for novels. However, I will on occasion use sans serif fonts for nonfiction books at the request of a client. All right, now I'm going to get into this in a little bit when we talk about fonts, but I just think it's important to mention it here because if we do a sans serif fonts are a little harder to read in blocks of text like this because they do not have those serifs that lead the eye to the next letter. So we have to do things to sans serif fonts to make them easily read, and increasing the line spacing is one way to do it, and having a smaller font size. So with sans serif fonts, I will change that rule to be 5 to 7 points larger than the font size. Okay, all right. So that is line spacing. Now indents. In my template, let me clear all of these things out. In my template, I have 0.25 indents, okay? This is a little large, all right? Never set your indents higher than 1/4 of an inch, okay? But the rule is your indents should equal your font size. All right, so using that rule, we're going to change our indent to 11 points. And that's the great thing about InDesign. We don't have to think about math. We don't have to convert points to inches. If we input points into our little fields, InDesign will automatically convert it into whatever system units of measurements we're using. All right, I prefer inches. You can set it up to pixels or you can set it up to other things. All right, so this is what the indent looks like when it is the same as the font size. So depending on the book, and my mood, you could say, will determine whether I set it up to be the font size or whether I keep the 0.25 indent. Okay, so those are 2 options for you with indents. All right, so that's basically all we have on the numbers, so we are moving on. Okay, for the next couple of steps in our 10 things to know about book formatting, we are going to work with an actual book that I am formatting for a client. And moving on to step 4, or the 4th thing you need to know, that is scripts are your friend. You may be like, well, I don't know what a script is. It's not my friend. But if you start formatting in InDesign, scripts will definitely be your friend. Scripts are basically code that you can run on a document that will take the number of steps of completing something from maybe even 100 down to 1 simple click. So if you've ever formatted your own document, you know, we're going to go skip this one first. You know, you probably have been told that you should remove double spaces and replace them with single spaces. You should remove tabs because it's better to use first line indent than tabs. If you use a lot of M-dashes, you may not type the actual Unicode, which is you hold down the Alt key and you type 0151. That gives you an M-dash. You may not have that habit. You may just do a double dash. Sometimes Word converts double dashes into an M-dash and sometimes they don't. Other programs such as Google Docs does not. So you may have a lot of double dashes in your document. You may automatically put a space after a period and then hit the paragraph, the enter key, so that gives you a paragraph mark. You may also accidentally put a space after a paragraph mark, so it would be before the beginning of a new sentence. All those little spacing things can cause issues in your formatting, so we need to get rid of them. That's a lot of find and replaces that we have to run on one document. Guess what? There's a script for it. Super, super easy. So when we get into the formatting job that I'm going to show you, I'll show you how easy it is to get rid of all these things. Now, the other script, with every job I do, there are 2 scripts I run at the very beginning after I place the manuscript. All right. One of them is to remove all of these things. The next one is to change any local formatting to character styles. Now, when we get into styles later on in this presentation, I'll go over what local formatting is versus character styles. But basically, local formatting is when you set something in italics in Word. You may set it in italics, you set it in bold. You may underline something in Word. That is all local formatting. But in InDesign, we need it to be a character style. Now, we can do local formatting, but then you're going to have a whole bunch of overrides in your text, and we don't want overrides. So we want to stick to character styles. So if you've ever formatted or tried to format in InDesign, you brought in your document, you set styles, and all of your italics disappeared. Yeah, it happens. However, if you follow my advice, and the minute you place a document, you run a quick script, it's going to take all that local formatting in your document and apply character styles. So it's going to set your italics that were locally formatted in Word into an italic character style in InDesign. So let's get started with that. The template that I've mentioned before, we're going to be using that. Like I said, every job I do, no matter what it is, starts with this template. So I am starting with the template. I have my client's job. It's currently in a Word document. So what I'm going to do is go to File. I'm on page 1, which is where chapter 1 should always start. So I have this, what's called a text frame. I have it selected, and then I'm going to go to File, and we are going to Place. And the command for that is Control-D. So if you are about shortcuts, get to know them because they definitely save a lot of time. So Control-D is to place. I am going to just place her Word document. Okay, so we're going to place it. Now, there is a way, once this places, I'll show you something. Now, you remember, we only had 1 page of this document. What's happening here is because of the way I set up this template, InDesign is automatically adding pages until the end of this document. So we went from 1 page all the way up to 475. Okay, so the whole entire manuscript is in here now. Okay, so let me undo that real quick because I'm going to show you what the place is. You can go to File, Place. Now, I never do this because I've already done it once. But the first time you do this, you probably want to click on Show Import Options and then click on OK. Well, you got to select the file first, Stephanie. And then this screen is going to pop up. It's going to say Microsoft Word Import Options. Now, this may look intimidating at first, but it's quite simple. It'll say Include Table of Contents text. Well, we don't have a table of contents, so it really doesn't matter. It'll say Include Index text. So if you have a Word document that has index markers in it, you definitely want to check this. I always just leave them checked because it's not going to hurt. In most cases, a novel's not going to have either one of those. Footnotes and endnotes. Again, this document doesn't have any, but you definitely want to bring those in if they are in like a nonfiction book you're working on. Don't worry about import a static text. That applies to the endnotes. If you do have endnotes in your document, you never want to select this one. Use typographer quotes. Yes, yes, yes. We definitely want to use typographer quotes. What typographer, that's kind of a tongue twister, quotes are those quotes that are curly and not straight up and down. So a prime mark is straight up and down. So you think inches and feet, those are prime marks. Inches and feet should not be curly quotes. But for dialogue, we definitely want the curly quotes. Okay, so always have this checked. The first time you place a document, you may have to select this, and then there's another place in InDesign under Preferences, but the template that I have should already automatically use typographer quotes unless you've changed something. All right, so formatting. We never want to say remove styles and formatting from text and tables, because if we select this, it's going to automatically get rid of our italics, which we do not want to get rid of. We need those italics. So we want to make sure to preserve styles and formatting from text and tables. Manual page breaks. You can tell it to preserve page breaks or do no page breaks. I like to set page breaks in styles, so I'm going to tell it to do no page breaks. If there are graphics in the book that you're importing, you want to import those. Definitely never check import unused styles. We don't want those. Don't bring in track changes. It's best to clear out any changes or any comments in your Word document before you import it in. And we definitely don't want to convert bullets and numbers to text. Now down here, it'll say import styles automatically, or you can map styles if your document has styles built in, you can map them. So this one just uses normal. So I typically don't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for this case. I just want everything that's normal to come through as chapter text, which is my main body text for the template. So we're going to click on OK. And I usually choose import styles automatically, but whatever you choose here, it's going to stay this way. So the next time you go to File, Place, and you bring in a document, all your settings are going to stay here. And that's why I never use this menu, because I've already done it once. I know what it's set up to be, and I don't need to worry about it every time I place. It's automatic. So you don't have to show import options all the time. All right, so we're going to click on OK, and it's going to fill. So if you look right now, we have 5 pages in our document. And once it imports everything in, we will have over 400. Now, you'll notice that I already placed the file on my page 1 of the template. That's very, very essential in a little bit when we start talking about master pages. Just know, if you utilize my template, make sure you always place it on that one text frame that's already built in, because that is the master text frame. Okay, so now that we've placed this, now what? Well, what did I say that I do the first time I place a document? Right off the bat, I'm going to run 2 scripts. I'm going to run this script called preptext.javascript. This is a script that does not come with InDesign, so you will need to find it. If you get my template, I will include it in the zip file with the template. And there is another one that I run called Find Change by List. But let's talk about that formatting, that local formatting. I'm going to show you what I mean. First off, we need to find where she may have had an italics in her document. So we'll quickly look through. And I want you to look as we're looking through. You can see all these paragraph marks, and all of these carets are actually spacing. So before I run those scripts, I'm going to do one thing to get rid of all of those. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. You'll also notice, it's always important to look at your document. You'll notice that here, this isn't an M dash like it needs to be. This is an N dash followed by a space. So there are certain things that we are going to have to manually correct that our scripts do not correct, but that's okay. Here's another one. I believe there was, I'm going to show you. All right. These are periods and not ellipses, so that's one thing we'll need to correct. And I believe, see, here's some more ellipses that look a little different than that other one. Here is a double dash that needs to be an M dash. And then I am going to show you. All right, so here are some italics. So she wanted few in italics and making in italics. So what happens when I set the style, all of my main chapter text is going to be, right now it comes through as normal from the Word document, but I want it to be chapter text. So I'm just going to click on chapter text and assign that. And you'll notice that few and making are highlighted in this bright blue teal color. It's not going to print that way. So if we switch to our print preview, you'll notice that that teal goes away. This is just InDesign telling us that there's a character override here. So you'll see that all of these have this teal mark, and that just means all of these all of this text, there's some sort of character override. It's all set to normal, and there's no rhyme or reason. We want to try to get rid of these character overrides, because when we convert to an ebook, character overrides can really muddy your ebook. You can really put a lot of unnecessary code in your ebook that you really don't want, because that's just going to increase your file size. So when I do formatting, I make sure that everything is set to either a character style or paragraph style. So this few is a local formatting. That's where the Control-I or the italics in Word was used. So we want to get rid of this. You can select large passages of text and say clear all overrides, and that goes away. But we lost our italics. We don't want to get rid of those. We want to keep those. So we need to convert them into a character style called italics. But we don't have a character style for italics yet. I could easily create one, but why create one when we can run this JavaScript prep text? It will automatically do it for us. It will convert superscripts, italics, bold, underline, several different types of local formatting options. It will convert them into character styles. So let's look at our character styles menu now. We have 3. We have all caps, we have drop cap, and we have one called no break. So let's run this first script, this prep text script. And you have to be in the text frame for it, and it will only run on that text frame. So all of the front matter that we had before chapter 1, it's not running it on there. And if we add any back matter at the end, it's not running the script on that. So we need to run it every time to each text frame. Now, luckily, we haven't put any other text frames other than, our main book. So we don't need to worry about it. All right, so now that we've run that, let's go find wherever I was, and I'll show you what it did. Now, if I could only remember the text to search for it. Look at this. Oh, I know what to do. Let me hold on one second. Sorry, I should have thought about this first. Chapter text. Find next. Okay, so here it is. So you'll notice that few and making are no longer set in that teal highlight because it now has the italics character style applied. And if we look at our character styles, you will see that we now have an underline character style. That means that there's underline somewhere in the document, and then there's italics. So if the author had also used bold or had superscripts, it would have listed even more. All right. So now when we go to clear, when we go to set our chapter text, when we change this normal to chapter text, all our italics are going to be set to a character style. So we do not need to worry about deleting those. All right, so the next script I run is called Find Change by List. I have no clue why it's called that. It really isn't, really isn't the most self-explanatory name for a script, but it is one that comes with InDesign, so you do not need to worry about it. And you can often find scripts for free. There are some scripts that charge. I typically stick with the free ones unless it's a script that I just cannot live without. But to be honest, there's only a handful of scripts I even use. I use the prep text one, and I use this one. And then there's one that I will use to assign master pages, which we'll get into a little bit later. All right, so now this Find Change by List, it goes through those double spaces and replaces them with single spaces. It gets rid of all of these extra paragraph marks. It gets rid of these that have space paragraph mark. And you may think, why do I need to get rid of these? Well, I like to run at the end of my formatting job, I like to run a couple of searches. And the reason why I run these searches is because there are two very common mistakes that happen in any document, no matter how many times it's been edited. Professionally, you could use a professional editor. Sometimes these things just happen. A paragraph may not end with a punctuation mark. And a paragraph and there may be missing quotations. Those are the two most common mistakes in any book. So I have some searches that I run to make sure that every paragraph ends in some sort of punctuation, and every quotation mark that is needed has an open and a closed if it is needed. So here, because we have a space before the paragraph mark, if I run that search, it's going to find this as not having a punctuation, even though there is one, because it's looking in this spot and not this spot. So we need to get rid of all of those. Also, sometimes when we're typing, we may not notice. Sometimes we include a space before a new paragraph, and we want to get rid of those too, because that's going to look off in our spacing. So the great thing is, well, if we didn't have this script, we would have to do control finds. Well, let's find two spaces and replace it with one. We'd have to run that. Then we'd have to find two paragraph marks, replace it with one, then we'd have to run that. We'd have to do double dash, replace it with an M dash, and then we'd have to run that. Then we'd have to find space, paragraph mark, just replace it with a paragraph mark, and then a paragraph mark, space, and replace it with a paragraph mark. So that can take some time. The great thing about this, the script does it all at once. So we are going to run it. And the nice thing about this particular script is you can run it on your entire document or the selected story. I don't care about running it on the front matter right now because there's really no front matter in there because we haven't touched it yet. So I'm just going to say selected story and click on OK. And if you had added other stories to this, you could run it over your entire document. So now looking at this, we don't have any extra spaces after a period. And if we searched for our double dashes, it would probably be set to M dashes. And basically all the unnecessary spacing that we have, such as tabs, are no longer there. All right, now one thing I should have done is that sometimes, depending on programs, weird spacings can come in. So this little caret icon, it's always a good habit to view your document with hidden characters because it can really show some of the hidden things in your document that we do not need. So this is actually a weird kind of space, and we want to get rid of those. So I am just going to, you'll see that it says find this. So this is a certain kind of space, and we just want to replace it with a regular space. And then it's going to look for all across the document. Okay, and now all spaces are just normal spaces. It's just sometimes weird codes come in from different programs. All right, so because we got rid of those and changed them to regular spaces, we need to run our find change by list again because this had the weird space in there, this had the weird space, and now it's converted to a normal space, and these just need to be deleted out. So we are going to run it again, and it'll get rid of those. Okay, so now we have our document set up and we're ready to begin and move on to the next part, which is number 5, masters all the way. Okay, masters. Masters are basically templates within your template. And if you decide you would like to have my template, I already have all these masters set up for you, saving you lots of time. This template is set up perfect for novels, and I will go over what these masters do as we're formatting this book. Okay, so typically with books, so here is page 1. Typically on chapter title pages, I'm going to go ahead and set a couple of styles. We're going to get into styles in a little bit, so I don't want to do too much. I know I want chapter 1 to be set to chapter number, and this date set to be the chapter title, and then I want this to be set to a drop cap, and this set to be chapter text. I'm just doing this. We're going to do it a little bit easier in a few minutes, but I'm just doing this to show you. So because this is a chapter title page, chapter title pages in book design start lower. Okay, it's normal. It's natural. I often have conversations with clients who don't like it. It doesn't matter. It's a normal thing. You need to have your chapter titles start lower. Reason? Well, chapter titles starting lower gives your reader an opportunity to pause. Okay. Whether they put a bookmark in and say, hey, I'll finish this later. Oh, just one more chapter, just one more chapter. When they visually see that it's lower on a page, they automatically know they're in a new chapter, and they may decide to use that moment to pause and pick the book up later. It's normal. We want them to start lower. They look better lower. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, you'll see that a lot of people will just hit the enter key just to bring down your, your chapter number down lower on the page, but then you have to make sure you hit the same enter key the number of times. But then when you do an ebook, those spaces have a tendency to disappear because you can't just have blank lines in an ebook. And it's not good habits. It's not a good habit to have just to keep on hitting the enter key. There are better ways to do that. And master pages is one of the great ways to be able to start lower on the page than, let's say, your other pages. Now, you'll notice that all of these pages are all set to lower. It's because when I first place a document, every page after that is going to fall under the same master as my page 1. So you'll notice over here, this is page 1, and it has the little B icon up here in the right-hand corner. That means it's using the B master page. What is the B master page? It's just 2 little boxes down here. It says B, but what that means is that's where the page number is going to go. It has a text frame on this page that's threaded and linked to a text frame on this page, and it starts lower on the page, meaning that our upper margin is set to 2.3583. I know that sounds kind of funny, but trust me, that's a good number. And then whereas our other pages, which are these, this is a double page spread. It has the page numbers down here. It has page headers up here, and it has text frame, and the text frame is set higher. That's because our margin is 0.9. All right. So these are what normal pages are that are throughout your book that do not have a chapter title on it. So here's our page with the chapter titles. Everything else probably needs to be set to an A master. So I'm going to go ahead and starting on page 2. So I'm clicking on page 2. I want you to look at this, 447 pages. I clicked on page 2. I'm going to hold the shift key down, and then I'm going to drag my little thing over here all the way to the end. So I have all the way from page 2 to page 443 selected. We are going to apply master to pages. We don't want all of these to be chapter titles. We are going to change those to the A header. Now, you may say, but what about all of the other pages, like chapter 2? It needs to start lower. Chapter 3, it needs to start lower. We're going to worry about that a little bit later because we need to set our formatting first before we start assigning master pages. But I am going to add some back matter to this so you can see how the master pages are done. All right, so we're going to come here. Now, sometimes as an author, you may have your back matter along in your main text flow, and that's fine. This particular author provided me her back matter separately. So I am going to import that in real quick. I am on another screen. So I am just setting up this document. There's just a few little things that I need to add to it. So we are going to add this right here. And I'm just going to delete out back matter, and then I'm just going to save this as a new document, and I'm going to say back matter. All right, and then we're going to place this one into, at the very end, we're just going to place it into a new text frame. So I'm going to do File, Place. I'm not going to show import options now because I already know what they're going to be, so I don't need to show it again. So we're just going to select the back matter, click open, and it's going to flow in that new back matter. Now, because we already ran our scripts, none of this new content is going to be set where like our italics, they're not set as a character style. So there's no italics assigned to this. So because we imported new content, we need to run our prep text script again. So now this is set to italics, and you'll notice that we have a new one called bold and a new one called hyperlink. And then we are going to run our other one, the find change by list, to the selected story, and it's going to get rid of all our spacing. All right, so here is the back matter. So we know we're going to assign what's next, and don't worry, this isn't pretty right now. I will make it pretty later. This is her note to me, so I'm actually going to remove it. And I am going to go ahead and, because this is the end of the book here, this is a sneak peek to a next chapter. We know we want this page set lower on the page. So we are going to actually assign the B chapter title to it. And then all the other ones are assigned the A master, which is fine. Here is a new page that's going to be other titles. And we will set this lower on a page later. We're going to talk a little bit about masters a little bit later. And so this is kind of a part one sneak peek to what the masters are. But if we go over all our master pages in our template, you'll notice that here is the A master. We have the author name, book title, chapter title. This will make sense in a little bit. And then we have a text frame. This is the primary text frame, which is very essential. So you'll see this story is the master's primary text flow. That's something that's very important that we're going to get into in just a little bit. Then here are our page numbers, but I cannot select the page numbers. Why is that? If we look at this A header, it says D on it. All right, so that means that this master page also uses the D master page. So if we look at master page D, you'll see it says page numbers. Well, chapter title also uses D. So chapter titles are the one that start lower. So we know we have our page numbers here as well. And then this E title no ornament also has the page numbers. And then this G header other titles also has also uses the page numbers. So if I change anything on this page number master, it's going to update in all of these other pages that also use the page number master, which is great. Definite time saving. You don't have to make a bunch of changes to several different master pages. Okay. Then we just have a blank master page. Sometimes we just have to add blank pages. And then we're going to get into a little bit of these, this E title, no ornament, and F title, no ornament or page number. And then this G header, other titles, this really is for nonfiction books. So we probably will never need it for novels. Okay, so that is a little bit about master pages. We know we want all our chapter title pages to be B, and then the majority of our content needs to be A. And you'll notice book title says Monday, August 10th. We'll get into the reason why that does that a little bit later. All right, so that is it on master pages for now. We are going to learn a little bit more later. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to work on styles. So number 6. You don't care to be stylish? With formatting, you should. We always need to use styles. It makes it easier if you want to change your font throughout your book. And you can base every single style in your book off of one style. So if you change the font for that main style that you use throughout, it will update all other styles that are linked to that one style. Now, sounds complicated? Well, the great thing is my template already has a whole bunch of styles set up that you never even have to think about it, okay? All right, so looking at the paragraph styles that I already have set up in the document, you'll see chapter text space above, first para space above, first para drop cap 2, centered space above. They all have different meanings, but the beauty is that they're all based around chapter text. So if I change the font that is set up in chapter text, the font and font size is going to change throughout all of these as well. Okay, now headings are a little different. We have chapter number, chapter title, part number, part title, and other titles. Then we also have some miscellaneous ones: break, image, ornament, copyright, no space, header, page numbers, dedication, scene break, edit, line number. Then block quote, we have a couple of block quote formats set up, and then we have some title page, book title, and then we have some table of contents styles set up. My template is already set up for all those styles, and so it's definitely a time-saving tool to start with this template. And now we are ready to kind of set styles. Now, when we imported this Word document, it imported all the Word text as normal. And if you used styles in Word, like you set your chapter numbers to like a heading 1. So if you had set your chapter numbers to heading 1s, it would say heading 1 down here. But most authors do not use styles. It's a good habit to use them in InDesign, and for your ebooks, you definitely want to use styles. They are your friend. They're not intimidating once you know what they are. So everything came through as normal. I'm actually going to come down here and say delete style. So it's going to remove my normal style. Anything that is currently assigned the normal style, I want InDesign to replace it with chapter text, because that's what the majority of our book is going to be styled as, chapter text. Okay, so I'm going to select that and click on OK. And I want you to watch your document. Okay, Now, suddenly we've gone from that Courier typewriting font to Piermont. And you'll notice that we still have some overrides here. That's okay. I'm going to do a select all, and I'm going to say clear overrides, and all of those are going to go away. Now, if you have a lot of block quotes in your book, when you clear the overrides, those block quotes are going to go away. So you may not want to always select all your text and clear the overrides. As a formatter, it's something that I do, but you may just want to manually clear overrides. So instead of clearing them all, you may just want to go chapter by chapter to make sure there's no any kind of special areas that you need to change. Okay, so you can actually clear overrides for chapter 1, and then you can move on to chapter 2, look for anything that requires any special formatting, and you can clear overrides for chapter 2. Okay, so what we're going to do quickly is I am going to go through this document and set styles. As you saw, I already had set styles up for the first couple of paragraphs. So we know that this is going to be a seam break. Okay, and I have a style called seam break. So I am to set a style, all you have to do is go to that line and click on the style you want it to be. So we want a seam break. So you'll notice that now this is centered. There's space above and space below, and that's because the style settings for seam break, we have space above, we have space below, and it is centered. Okay, now look at, hold on, we'll get into that in a minute. Now, after seam breaks, this is where you can generally tell the difference between somebody who knows what they're doing as a formatter and somebody who has never done formatting before and they don't have the background. They keep the first line after a seam break indented, right? Just like the first line of a chapter should be not indented, or you can have drop caps and some special formatting applied to that first chapter. You can do the same for that first paragraph after a seam break. So you can add a drop cap to it. You'll notice that for some reason, only the quotation is set to drop cap. That's because I have first pair drop cap selected. Well, guess what? What do you think first pair drop cap 2 means? That's where it takes the first 2 characters and set them to that drop cap. Now, we may not want to set this to a drop cap after a seam break. We just want it to be first para. First para means there's no indentions. That is normal. That is good. Don't indent the first paragraph after a seam break. All right, so moving on now. Chapter 2, we need this to be a chapter number, so we can click on chapter number here, but I'm actually going to show you a quick little time-saving tool, all right? We can search for chapter, so we're going to search, and we can tell InDesign to automatically set the style to chapter number when we find chapter, all right? So it's going to find next, we're going to change it, and it automatically set it to that style. Now, if I continued on to search, and she has chapter in her main text somewhere, like maybe somebody was talking about, oh yeah, I read the next chapter, it was really good. It's going to find that word chapter and it's going to replace it with chapter number heading, and that's in the main body text. We don't want that to happen. So we don't want to do a change all. You can just do a find next, then change, find next, then change, find next, then change, but there is a better way to do it. InDesign, we're going to undo that. InDesign, if things follow a certain pattern, you can easily change it with a grep search, okay? So what we want to find chapter, followed by a space, and then we have a number. So when we use a grep search, we get to add special characters in our search field. So if we just put number 2, well, it would find chapter 2, chapter 20, chapter 21, chapter 22, but it would not find chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5. So we want it to find any digit. So for find change, we can go to wildcard, we can go to any digit, and then we could do a search. But at this point, it's only going to find a single digit. So it'll find chapter 1, chapter 2, all the way up to chapter 9, but it's not going to find 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, because it has 2 digits. So we need to add something else that says repeat. We want it to repeat 1 or more times, so it's going to find those double digits or even triple digit chapter numbers. And then how does the chapter number, this line end? It ends with a paragraph mark, so we're going to put that in. We want it to find this, but we want to keep it what it says. So we can say found text. So it's going to replace what it finds with what it is. And then we want to tell it to change it to chapter number. Now, sometimes you may automatically style your chapter numbers using bold or italics. And that means when we run our prep text script, those are now going to have a character style set to bold and italic, but we may not want them styled that way. So if we click on character style and set it to none, it's going to remove any of those. Now this document didn't have it, but your document may. And when we get into the dates down here, that is one situation because this is set to italic. We may not necessarily want that in italics. So we need to clear that from the style. All right, so character styles, none, chapter number, none. Now I feel safe to go and do a change all, but guess what? It only found 2 instances. So what's up with that? Let's see if we can find it. Oh, well, the author, this is common. The author used numbers for some and then wrote out the title in another. So we need to rethink our little search. So we know it's chapter, we know it's space, and then it's going to be another wildcard where it's going to be any letter. It's going to repeat 1 or more times, and then it's going to end with a paragraph mark. Okay. We want it to replace it with what it is, and then we want to find format, leave find format blank, and then we want it to change where there's no character style, and we want to apply the chapter number style. So we're going to click on this. Still didn't find anything. And sometimes you have to think about it. Chapter. Sometimes it's sensitive, case sensitive. So we're going to try it again. We can say any character, repeat 1 or more times. And sometimes you just have to play around with it. And once you have a lot of experience in it, you'll be able to spot it right away, make it easy on yourself. So now we're going to click on change all. This time it found 35 instances, and so they should all automatically change. All right, so now you say, well, what happened to that chapter 3? Let's do something real quick so I don't forget. We're just going to say chapter 2 and then make sure chapter 1 we need to set as chapter 1 just to be consistent throughout. All right, so now you say, well, what happened to chapter 3? Well, it automatically went to the next page. Why is that? Well, we have that set up in our style. So in our style menu for chapter number, if we click on keep options, it'll say start paragraph on next page. Now, this particular author, she likes her chapters to always start on a right-hand page. So in cases where a chapter starts on a right-hand page, we may have a blank left-hand page, which is okay. What we don't want is we do not want any blank right-hand pages. That's considered a no-no in book formatting. So I am actually going to change the start paragraph or chapter number from on next page to on next odd page, which is always going to be a right-hand page. So now we're going to click on OK, and you're going to see that chapter 3 moved to the next page, the next odd page. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. All right, so now styles. All right, this is the template automatically uses Adobe Garamond Pro, which is a great universal font for pretty much any book. But this particular author, we already have, this is book 2 in a series, so we already have some styles set up. And I know that we use a font called Bookmania. And so we know we want Bookmania set up as the main font. So if I go into Edit, Chapter Text, and go to Basic Character Format, I'm going to change it to Bookmania. And we'll look at the font style under Bookmania, and there's several options. There's light, light, italic, regular, regular italic, semi-bold, semi-bold italic, bold, bold italic, black, and black italic. We want it to be regular, okay? I'm gonna click on OK and then click on OK, and that updated all the styles throughout, okay? So that's why we use styles. It's one quick and easy change, okay? All right, so now what we're going to do, now you'll notice that this didn't change, but this did, okay? And that's because I already have this one set up to use this particular font. So some fonts will change throughout your file and some fonts will not. And they are purposely set up that way because I always like to have like a sans serif for chapter number. Okay, so now we're going to scroll through. We know this is a scene break, and we know this is going to be a chapter title. Now you'll say, why is that pink? Well, pink means that there's something missing. Okay, so if we look up here on our toolbar, we'll see that italic is in brackets. And what that means is that Bookmania does not have an italic style. This is something that you have to be careful about with certain fonts, is that they name italics differently. So this one, the italic version, is called regular italic. All right, and I'm going to show you in just a minute why that's important to know. Let's go ahead and set the scene break. We can actually do a search for scene breaks. In just a minute, I'll show you how to do that. And then we're going to set that paragraph after a scene break as first para. We're going to set this as a chapter title. This is going to be our first para drop cap 2. So both the quote and the L comes through as big. And in some cases, you may not like this big quotation mark, but guess what? We can create a character style that makes that smaller. So we're going to do this, and we're going to say new character style. We are going to apply style to selection, and we're going to call this drop cap quotation. So anytime we have our first pair drop cap 2, we'll know that we need to assign that first quotation this character style. Now you may, let's go ahead and clear the overrides here so we can get rid of those spaces. Okay, and I am looking for an area. All right, let's scroll through. I want to find the right example for you. She didn't use a lot of italics. All right, so here, we know we already looked at this. We already set this to italic. So why isn't it italic? Like I said, Bookmania, it doesn't have a style called italic. So we now need to change the definition for the character style of italic, because we're using this Bookmania font, to regular italic. And now all those areas that had italic assigned are now italicized. So if we look at our chapter titles that were coming through a little funny, they're now assigned that regular italic. Okay, so once you have placed your document, you have your style set up, you need to go through and just assign styles. There's a lot of time-saving tips doing searches for chapter, your chapter numbers using search. And then other ones you kind of just have to manually choose. If you are into nonfiction books where your nonfiction book follow a certain schematic, you can set up next styles and select a whole block of text, and it will style the first one and then the next style and the next style. I'll show you that. I don't do that too much for fiction books because honestly, it's really not that big of a time-saving step, but I'm going to show you how to do it in just a minute because this particular template is set up with those next styles. Let's just quickly go through and assign styles. We're going to clear overrides again. And all right, so now we're going to use that method I mentioned. So we know that this needs to be chapter number, this needs to be chapter title, we want this to be drop cap, first pair drop cap, and then we want this to be chapter text. So what I have done, I have selected from the chapter number to that second paragraph. And what we can do is we can hover over chapter number in our style because we're going to start with chapter number. We're going to right click, and then we're going to say apply chapter number, then next style. Okay, and what did it do? It automatically said chapter title here, it said first pair drop cap here, and chapter text. And that's because if we look at the style for chapter number, and you come right here, it says next style is chapter title. So chapter number, chapter title, look at chapter title, what's the next style? First pair drop cap, look at first pair drop cap, what's the next style? Chapter text. So when you tell it to assign the next style, it's going to go through that hierarchy of styles. Saves you a little bit of time, so we can select these again, right click, next style, and bingo. Now, we know this needs to be first pair drop cap, and then we know we need to assign this drop cap quotation. Okay. All right, so that's a quick and dirty way of styles. Now, let's look at these scene breaks. We know we want anywhere there's asterisks to be assigned a scene break. And this author always cracks me up because she never does just 3 asterisks for her scene breaks. Sometimes she does a bunch, sometimes she does 2, and sometimes she does 10. You just never know what you're going to get. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a quick search. We're just going to go to our regular text search. We're going to find 3. Let's actually find 4 and replace it with 3. And we're just going to run this. We're going to do a change all. And I'm going to run it again, change all. I'm going to keep on running this until it says 0. So we had 16 there, we had 11 there. And if you'll notice this one, it keeps on going down. And there is another way that you can tell it to continually to run, but I am not that complex when it comes to scripts. grep searches, I'm sorry. So I typically take my time and do things this way. And now we have 0. All right, so we're good now. So why did I do that? Well, now what we can do is we can find 3 asterisks followed by an end of paragraph. We actually want it to replace it with 3 asterisks followed by a paragraph, and we want it to no character style, and we want it to assign a scene break. Now, for items such as this, when I could do a change all right now, and it will set the style for all of the scene breaks to be the actual scene break style. But in examples such as this, where I know I want the next style applied, I will just do a find. So we want to change that. Then we want to come here to the next, let me move this over. We want to come to the next paragraph and apply the first para style. So change first para. So this is it's not 100% automated, but now you know that all of the paragraphs after scene breaks will be set to first para. Okay, so we'll quickly run through these. All right, now I'm not going to bore you I'm going to worry about doing that later. Now, that is it for styles for now. The majority of the book is one of the most time-consuming things is going through everything and making sure all your styles are set. But I'm not going to, do that. Sometimes it's pretty quick, but we're not going to worry about it right now. But I am going to show you something that's really, really cool. Let's say you have a series that you already have set up styles for. All right. So like I said, this particular book is book 2 in a series. So I've already set up styles. I already have defined them a certain way. So shouldn't I be able to use that? Well, yeah, you can. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our style menu. We're going to go to our paragraph styles. We are going to click on this little menu right here, and we are going to say load paragraph styles. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I am actually going to look for the InDesign document for the first book in series. And here is the InDesign document. I'm going to select it and click on open. And all my styles are going to update. You'll see it says incoming style, and it says it conflicts with its existing style. So we're telling it to use the incoming definition from the other template that I had already created for book 1. And so it will update. Okay, so we're going to click on OK. And now we might see some changes. Yep, so there's some changes there somehow. And this is how it was styled in the other book. And so we're going to keep that the way it is. All right, so that's a quick and easy way to share styles between documents if you want to copy it. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to master pages. And first, I'm going to open up this particular book. This is the styles that we actually copied. And this book is set up a little differently. That this was multiple characters, and we do so we're going to have to tweak our styles a little bit. We know that for chapter title, we want some space after. So I'm going to go to chapter title, and then I'm going to go to indents and spacing, and we're going to set our space after to be probably 3/4 of an inch. And that's going to put that separation in, and that's going to put that separation in throughout. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to assign some master pages. All right. So this is B. And if we looked in the other document, we had this glass shards on our chapter title pages. So we're actually going to copy those. And we are going to go to our master page, because if we copy it here, let's say we paste that graphic here, it's not going to be placed on every single page that needs that B chapter title. All right, so what I did to change the master for this particular page, I came up here to the pages panel and I dragged the B chapter title down to page 7 here, and that's what updated it. So let's do that again. Let's go to chapter 3. Let me make one little setting change in chapter number. We actually want those to start on the next hand page. Keep options on the next odd page. And then we are going to, we know that this page needs to be blank. So we're going to assign the C master page here. And then we are going to assign the B chapter title here. But remember, for our chapter titles, we want that little glass shards to repeat in the top corner of every page. So to make that happen, you may instinctually think that, well, I'm going to copy this and put it on every chapter title page. No, we're going to use our master. We're going to cut this from chapter 1. We're going to place it on our B chapter title page, and we're going to click place. And now our glass shards are on every single, well, this needs to be a B master. So now we don't have to manually add those graphics in. We can't select it because it's on the master page. Okay, so that's why we use master pages. Now, for this particular book as well, we had some glass shards on our regular pages, on our A master pages too. So I'm just going to copy those, and then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to place these on my A master pages. And then now we have the glass shards on those pages. Now you may say, what is the big deal? Actually, you know what? These aren't the same. We look at this and we look at what that page looks like. The glass shards are not covering the text. But here, when we copied and placed them in the same spot, it covers the text. Why is that? Well, it's because I haven't changed the book size yet, okay? My template is set to 6x9. Her books are 5x8. So before you get into too much formatting, set the book size first. So typically my workflow is place the document, run the scripts, and then set the book size. I did not do it on purpose because I wanted you to see how to change your book size after the fact. So we've already set some master pages. We've already placed these graphics. Now what's going to happen when I change the book size? So to change the book size, because we've used masters already, it is going to be super simple. We're going to go to File, We're going to go to a document setup, and then we're going to go down here to adjust layout. Set to 6:9. We want it to be 5:8. We do not need to make any other tweaks, and we're going to click on OK. InDesign will take a little bit of time to think about that. And because we used master pages and we have the text frames that are on all the master pages set to a primary text frame, everything is going to automatically adjust. If you have problems doing this and your pages do not automatically adjust, it's because for some reason it is not set in the master text frame. That is a common error. When I teach people how to use InDesign, they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I'm resizing my document, but none of my text frames are changing. It's because they're not part of the primary text flow. So you need to make sure with the template, if you place it in that first box on page 1, you're always placing it into the master primary text frame. So when you make changes throughout your document, especially when it comes to document size, everything will automatically update. It does take a minute. So InDesign's rethinking things. And now, looks a lot different now because we have smaller pages, okay? So now what we're going to do is we are actually going to delete those elements that I copied from the other document, and then we are going to replace them. So I'm going to copy this again, and that way they'll come into the same exact position as they were in our other document. All right, so arrange, send it back. All right, so now we know that for novels, we want the author name on the left-hand side, so I'm going to delete out the book name. And we want book title on the right-hand side, so I'm going to delete out chapter title. Okay, so in this template, I have some text variables in here that will update, and you want to remove whichever one you don't want. So if you want to do author name and book title like this, make sure you remove the other text variables. Now, what do I mean by text variables? Well, watch this. Right now, I have book title here. I have book title and subtitle here. I have author name here. And if you notice in those page headers, I have author name here and book title here. These are all text variables. So if I enter far from the surface, which is our book title, we do not have a subtitle, so I'm going to delete that one out. Our author name is Danielle Kill, so we're going to put that there. We're actually going to assign this as regular italic. I'm going to update our style real quick. So here is our book title and here is our author name. Let's see what happened on the copyright page. Well, it automatically filled in our book title and it automatically filled in our author name. So what do you think happened on those headers? It did the same thing. It automatically put in our author name and it automatically put in our book title. So InDesign has a ton of little time-saving tips that will help you. You just have to know how to use them. What font should you use for your book formatting? Now I'm going to show you several samples as part of this segment. And first off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm showing you. I have a book that's available. It's available for purchase on Amazon. The title is, But How Does It Print? So we can do all this fancy formatting. We can pick all these great fonts, but what if it looks like crap in print? Anytime I design a book, I always encourage authors to get a sample book printed, a proof copy, just to make sure everything turns out exactly as they expect, because how things look on the screen doesn't necessarily translate into how it looks on print. So it's always important to see how it prints. Now, I have a sample book available on Amazon. Like I said, it's called How Does It Print? It is a huge book that is just a collection of pages, and I'm showing you a preview of some of it right here, of how images print, how fonts print, how, just how different things look when it's printed using KDP. Okay, so this sample book has pretty much any kind of font combination you can imagine that you may want to use for your book formatting jobs. It is set to 6:9, and all the fonts in the main body text are set to 12 point with a 15 point line spacing. I did not make any changes to that throughout because I want you to see the visual difference between fonts and how even at 12 points, some fonts look larger and some fonts look smaller. So in this book, you'll have plenty of fonts to choose from that you can use. Some of them are available through Adobe's Typekit, which comes with your subscription to Adobe InDesign. Some of them are base fonts that may come with Microsoft Word. Some of them are more higher end, more expensive fonts that you would have to buy through myfonts.com. And some of them are Google fonts that are free. So let's take a quick look. This is my first sample. We'll zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. And this is on the bottom of each page for like chapter start pages. I will tell you what font it is. This is Athleus or Atlas. I don't know how to pronounce it, at 12 point with a 15 point line spacing. So I tell you that here. And Yana. So the second one is the accent font. Let's make a couple of tweaks to this. We're going to take this down to fix that spacing. And again, this is Yana, so it's a little bit more decorative. This one has those special glyphs. So certain fonts, such as Yana, come with special glyphs. This is what the regular A looks like. And then here's another option for the A. Here's another option. And here's another option. And then here's another option. So some fonts come with many different glyphs available for certain letters that allow you to get really decorative. So here is the R, and here are some more R samples. You probably can't see it because it's not really that big, so let's make it a little bigger. So here are all the different R's that you could use as part of your glyphs. All right, so certain fonts come with those decorative ones. We're just going to undo this, and we're going to redo that. All right, so this is Athleus 12-point with Yana. Okay, then we're going to scroll through our little sample book. Let's kind of center it on the page so we can see it better. Here's what Athleus looks like in large blocks of text. Here's what our some headers look like in the Yana. Here's what a drop cap would look like. And again, we can change to a more decorative glyph. I wouldn't do that because I think it interacts too much with the key and it looks a little cluttered. So there are certain things that I do like to keep simple. If we use this W with a little swoosh, it kind of covers up our quotation marks, which kind of looks cool. Or you could always just drop the quotation marks down so it's not touching the W. All right. Now, also another thing that I did, I used different illustrations and photos, some vector images, and in most cases I tell you where that image came from, and so that gives you an idea of how that particular image printed. So you'll notice that this particular image was a public domain. This font is Garamond 12-point, 15-point line spacing. As you'll notice, Athleus looks a little bigger than Garamond, even though they're both 12-point, and that's something to know. As we're looking at all these different samples, some of them are going to look way bigger than others. Garamond is a great classic font that you can use for pretty much any book. This is Bookmania. All right, it looks a little bold. It also comes with some great glyphs to choose from. It looks so much better printed than it does on screen. You may say, oh, that just looks a little bit too bold, but when it's printed, it reads very, very well. So that is one of the reasons why I highly recommend having a sample book that shows how all the different fonts print, so you can determine which font you want to use for your book. This one is ITC Esprit. It is the font that I use for all of my books. I'm also an author. It is my favorite font. It's more of a modern serif font, but it prints really, really well. Whereas Garamond gives you that classic look. If you have more modern books, I write young adult novels, and so I like to use a more modern font. So this is what I use. And then this is Cinzel. All right, so again, this is 12-point. We're going to continue scrolling. This is Caslon. If you have a historical book, Caslon is a great font to use because it gives that old style look and it's very readable. We have accented it with a font called Celestia Antiqua. Again, it's 12-point. This is Electra. Electra is probably the most common font used by traditional publishers. So it's another good font to use. And the accent font is called Abigail. Here is Warnock Pro. It is a great substitute for Times New Roman. Has the same look and feel, but it reads a lot better than Times New Roman. Arno Pro is another good one. It is a little bit smaller, even though it's 12-point. This is Baskerville Old Face. It's another one of those kind of classic fonts. If you write a historical book, this would be another good option to use. We'll just quickly scroll through the rest. This is Book Antiqua. Again, this one does not look all that great on screen, but it prints amazing with POD printing. You can never go wrong with Book Antiqua, I promise you that. Adobe Johnson Pro, again, it's a little smaller, a little bit more classic. And this is Bookman Old Style. It actually looks a lot bigger than some of the other fonts, but yet it's 12-point. Now, I would not use this font at this size with this line spacing. It's purely for this sample book. I would actually decrease the font size and probably do something like that with this font instead of having it so large. But in the sample book, I wanted you to be able to compare all 12-point fonts across the board. Here is one that's much smaller. This is Californian. And any of the fonts that I have in the sample book are going to be great for your formatting jobs. This is Cambria. And this one is Centaur. This is another kind of old classic font. It looks smaller at 12-point. This was Century School Book. This is great for children's books. And this is Libra Baskerville. This font looks huge. This actually looks like a 16-point font. So this is another one of those fonts that I would greatly decrease the font size if I were to use it. Okay. So when we're talking about fonts, even certain fonts at 12-point, they do not look the same. So depending on what font you choose will determine what size. Now, With fonts, always set your chapter text to a serif font. It's what we read. It's what we're most comfortable with. We don't want to change that. Okay, it just makes it easier. Now, if you do want to use a decorative font, you can set your chapter numbers, your chapter titles, and your drop caps in decorative fonts. But your main text that most people are going to read should be in a very readable serif font. Okay. All right, so we're going to just quickly scroll through all these different samples. This is Palatino. This is another great book font. Again, it doesn't print all that. It doesn't look that great on screen, but when it's printed, it looks great. Georgia is another font that comes with Microsoft Office, and that it is a really good font to use. Here is Perpetua. We see that it's a little smaller. This is Rockville. And let's see, and that's it for now. So this was just a sample book I created, but I have that entire book up and done. It's probably, I think it's over 500 pages. So it's got 500 pages of different font samples, different graphic samples, different shading, and everything that will help you with your formatting. So be sure to check that out. And that way you'll have a great resource to figure out what font you want to use. All right, moving on. 8, widows, orphans, and runts. Oh my, what in the world are they? These are what sets indie authors who do their own formatting, who really don't know what they're doing. And I'm not going to just say indie authors. I'm also going to say book formatters for indie authors. If a person is formatting and they don't correct widows, orphans, and runts, I can guarantee you they probably do not have a background in formatting. Widows, orphans, and runts should be corrected. They are always corrected in traditional publisher books. And they should be corrected in indie books, but the majority of them are not. And some of the automated applications that you use, Vellum, Readsy, Draft2Digital, some of them do not take care of widows, orphans, and runts. So the only way to really take care of widows, orphans, and runts is to use InDesign. InDesign makes it a lot easier if you know what you're doing. So what are they? Let's take a look. All right, we're going to go back to our document. Now, this is my template. I already have things set up in the template that takes care of widows, orphans, and runts. Okay, so we are going to fake what a widow, an orphan, and runt is just to show you. All right, so what I'm just going to do a couple of things. We're just going to change these. We don't care about this, and we're going to update the style, redefine style. And then I am going to do one more thing so we can have some runts. I am going to delete out this code. Okay, so now my document is no longer set up to correct widows, orphans, and runts. So we're going to scroll through until we find them. So let's kind of scroll through. I'm not seeing anything bad just yet. Let's go ahead and assign. Now that we've made some changes, all my master pages are off, so we're just going to reassign everything so it's all set to the A master again. I would consider this a runt. It's a very small last line. It's only 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. But this is okay. It's not terrible. It's not a bad runt, so we can leave it as is. Here is an orphan. So what does that mean? This is a 3-line paragraph. So an orphan is where the last line on a page has been left stranded. So what does that mean? The rule in book design is that you should have 2 lines of a paragraph at the bottom, 2 or more, and then 2 lines or more at the top. You never want to leave a single line of a paragraph stranded by itself. Okay, that is an orphan. A widow is the opposite of that. Let's say we rearrange this. Just do this one little thing. Now, this is a single line on top of the page. It's a widow. We don't want those. Those are considered no-nos, okay? So the beauty about using InDesign is that you can build in widows and orphan controls in your style. And that's what I've already done with the template. It's under keep options. We want at start and at end of the paragraph, we want them to both be we want them to both be 2. So there's always going to be 2 lines at the top and 2 lines at the bottom, okay? All right, so let's go to runts again. We notice this one is a runt. And let's see, there's going to be some that are more forgiving. Here we go. This is a perfect example for a runt. We want, at a minimum, if our book is a 5x8 book, we want a minimum of 7 characters on that bottom line. If our book is a 6x9, I usually try to say I want a minimum of 10 characters on that bottom line. Okay, so this would be a runt. for a 6x9 using my criteria, because this would be more than 7, so it's okay for a 5x8, but it's less than 10, so for a 6x9, this would be considered a run. Just looks better to be corrected. And in my InDesign template, I already have something built in, so you do not have to worry about runs. We're going to copy it again, and we're going to see how we're going to keep an eye on this hand, and we're going to see how this particular paragraph changes. All right, so we're going to go to our chapter text. We are going to add a grep style, new grep style. And again, you don't have to worry about this being over your head right now because this is already built into the template. I'm just showing you the capabilities that InDesign has over these. And these are not automatic. These are little tweaks that I've done along the way to help me solve certain issues. So now you'll notice that it now says my hand and just instead of just hand. And you'll notice that this is yellow now. It's really not yellow. That's just in the preview. And this just means that there is a justification rule that's breaking to get my hand down here. And that's okay. You just got to look at it visually and make sure it doesn't look too spaced out, and it will be good. All right, so that's how we handle widows, orphans, and runts. And if you have my template, the template is automatically set up to correct those issues. Okay, moving on. This is another one of those things that not all the formatting, the people who offer formatting, and also all of the online systems, Readsy and all of those, they may not necessarily do a good job at these items, okay? It's baseline and page balancing. What the heck are they? So let's go back to our document. When you've looked at my document, you'll notice that I have these blue lines here shown up. Now, you can actually make those go away if you go to View. I never turn mine off, so I have to find it. Hide baseline grid. Now those all go away, okay? But I want them because I use the baseline grid. And what the baseline grid is if you took a ruler, and let's pretend this is our little ruler, and went across your pages, this line of text should be the same line on the opposite page. So meaning they should all hit the same baseline. Now, with novels, this is pretty easy to do. However, when you get into certain spacings such as scene breaks and such, you can start seeing how things are no longer on the same baseline. So if we see I couldn't even fake enthusiasm for the salad, and then Ethan cocked his head, they're no longer on the same line. That's because I turned all of this off to not set on the baseline. So you definitely don't want that. InDesign makes it easy to set everything on the baseline. Now, where baselines get really tricky is in nonfiction books that have multiple level of headings, but it's still workable in InDesign to be able to have everything on the same baseline. You just got to know what you're doing. So the good thing is my template's already set up to a baseline. We don't need to worry about that. And then the next thing on our little thing was page balancing. What does page balancing mean? Well, it's kind of similar to the baseline, all right? What page balancing means is that when we have a double page spread, our left-hand page needs to end on the same line as our right-hand page, meaning that these pages are balanced. The one exception is, you guessed it, the page at the end of the chapter. Those pages do not need to be balanced. And then again, at the beginning of a chapter, they do not need to be balanced. But pages throughout should be balanced. This is a manual process. And we have to think about our widows, orphans, and runts. And we also have to think about our justification settings, because to correct page balancing, we have to make some tweaks to the spacing in our paragraphs. And we don't want to make it where it looks too spaced out or not spaced enough. All right. So looking at this page now, page balancing should be the last thing you do before you go to File, Print to PDF. Okay. Because changes in font size, changing in indents, changing in spacing is going to affect the way a page balances. So for the most part, what I typically do is and a lot of times if you have a lot of edits after you've completed your first draft, those edits can change the balance, if you've already gone through and balanced your pages, any edits can affect that. So it's something that you're constantly having to relook at. So typically I do not balance pages until it's the very last thing. I've gone through edits, I've done everything, I don't need to do anything else. And now I'm ready to balance pages. Now, this document isn't nearly ready for page balancing, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's kind of start towards the beginning. And this is also where I typically will set all my master pages. So we know that this is page B. Let's go ahead and bring in that one graphic, just so we'll already have it. We're going to copy that, then we're going to come to B, and we're going to paste it. All right. Give me a minute. Okay, so let's just get ready to look at this. All right. So this page is fine. There's nothing we need to do to balance it because this page is blank. This page, this paragraph ends on this line. This paragraph ends on this line. Now, when you have been doing formatting for a while, you can typically look at a page and see where you can add or take away space to get this page balanced. So one thing you can do, you can either try to get both of these lines down here, so we need to make up one space here, or we can move this one line to the next page. And let's move this one line to the next page. I'll show you how to do that first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Keep Options, and we are just going to change that end to 3 lines just for this paragraph. We're not in the paragraph styles, we're just in the styles for this one, the Keep Options for this one line. So to get that, you would go up here to this 3 line and choose Keep Options from here, not Keep Options from the style, because if you change the Keep Options in the style, you're changing it throughout the document. We just want to change this one line. So now, if we look, this page is balanced and this page is balanced. So we solved that one. Now, let's say we didn't do it that way. We want to figure out how to add an additional line to this page. Well, we can look at our short lines. So sections is fairly short. Let's change what's known as the tracking, which is the spacing between everything. We're going to adjust the tracking down to 10. -10, that didn't do it. We're going to take it to -20. That still didn't do it. That's where I stop. I will not go any farther. 30 did it, but if we look at it, that is super, super tight. That may be difficult to read. So we're not going to keep that. We're going to see if we can find a space somewhere else. Now, like I said, yes, this is a very time-consuming process, but once you start seeing it, you're going to automatically tune into that one paragraph that you need to change that will balance that page. So this is something that I can complete pretty quickly because I have been doing this for many, many years. All right, so what I did here is I just selected this paragraph and I put the tracking down to -10. That gave me that extra line, and these pages are now balanced. So let's go to the next page. We need to balance these. How can we do that? Well, we can definitely try to reduce the tracking here, and that did it. So that's one option. We can try to push one of these lines down an extra so we can increase the tracking. 10 didn't do it there, but 10 did it there. 20 did it there. And that's okay. That doesn't look too horribly spaced out. We can get away with that. But you may want to see other paragraphs that are, nope, that one's not going to do it. So you just have to look around and see what you think. So this one, we're just going to increase it to 20. We got those balanced. All right. So page balancing is very, very important. And when I balance pages is typically when I go ahead and assign those master pages to like the chapter title pages. Okay. All right. Here is another one. Let's see. Mirror is a very short line. It's 7 spaces. So let's take the tracking down. But what happened? Now we're 2 lines short. So they're no longer balanced. And it's going to be harder to get them balanced because now we have 2 lines to make up. That means the next paragraph is 3 lines, and 3 lines will not fit without causing a widow or orphan. So that's page balancing, and widows and orphans and runts can all go hand in hand. So let's see, -10, -20. We could live with that. We'll have to look to think if that may be a little bit too spaced out, but it really doesn't look too terrible. So those are now balanced and we're okay. Now, when it comes to changing your tracking, I never go any lower than -20 and I never go any higher than 20. So if you can't get it to work, you have to look at other things. Now, if you can't get a page to balance, this is where publishers, traditional publishers, they actually will change some of the words. They'll delete things out or they'll add things in just to make it balanced. This is one of the positives of formatting your own book because you have the liberty to do that. As a formatter, I do not have the liberty of changing text in a client's book. I wouldn't do it. Now, I have sat on a screen share with clients before, and they have given me edits on the fly just so we can get their pages to balance. So that is all about page balancing. Here's another one. Let's see. Right off the bat, I know we can try to change the tracking on this one. That corrected it. Bingo. So like I said, in most cases, I have an eye. I can usually spot exactly where I need to adjust the change. And that's just me having the experience and knowing exactly where I need to make that tweak. So that comes with time. All right, now, guess what? We are at the end of our presentation. So what is that number 10 that I have kept, that I keep referring to? Number 10, 10 things that you didn't know, 10 things that you need to know about book formatting in Adobe InDesign. You have me as a resource, okay? I have been using InDesign since the early 2000s, since it came out. Well, I fought it for a little bit, and I really didn't start using the program until InDesign 2.0 came out because I used InDesign's predecessor, which is Adobe PageMaker. It was my favorite program. So when they put out InDesign, I was like, nope, I don't want to learn a new program. I love my PageMaker. I know how to do things in PageMaker. I'm not going to use a new program. Eventually, Adobe said, hey, we're going to stop updating PageMaker, so you need to move to InDesign if you want the best stuff. So eventually, I had to move to InDesign, and I have just watched them make the program better and better and better with each release. I know InDesign well, and you have me as a resource. What do you say? What do you mean I have you as a resource, Stephanie? Well, first off, the template that I mentioned, I have it on my website to purchase. It is normally $50 for the template, but for you Women in Publishing Summit attendees, you receive the template for half off. So if you go to my website and order the template, it's under resources on my website, so look for it there. And the code is WIPS, Women in Publishing Summit 2021, and you will get that $50 template for $25. What you also get is my training videos. I will take you step by step on how to format a book. Now, this is for novels. If you are into nonfiction, what I recommend is setting up some one-on-one training with me, and that's something, just reach out to me, contact me. My email address is stephanie@alt19creative.com. Email me and say, hey, look, I'm interested in some one-on-one training, and I'll quote you a price based on what you need. So you have me as a resource. Let's go back to that template. You get hours upon hours of content in videos where I take you step by step on how to use the template, how to get fancy with your graphics, how to place graphics in your book, everything. And another thing, you will have access to my Facebook group. I have a group on Facebook called Building Books with Adobe InDesign. It is a group where you can go in and ask me direct questions. So it's like you have your own personal trainer right there. So you will get access to that group when you purchase the template. So, hey, $25. You have a template that you can use for hundreds of books, and you have a trainer right there at your fingertips. That is not too bad of a deal. Also, in my Facebook group, you can post your questions, and if it's something that a lot of people have problems with, I will often ask you, hey, send me that document you're working on. I will show you how to change it in your document, and I will do a video on it and share it with the group. So I post content weekly, try to do new videos if InDesign has come out with an update, show you some of the new features, and part of that training, when you purchase the template, part of that training includes how to get ebooks out of InDesign. A lot of people will tell you you can't do ebooks in InDesign, that it's too complicated, that it doesn't produce a good ebook. They don't know what they're doing. So I will walk you through step by step how you can use that template to build your print book and then build your ebook. That's all I have. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, 10 things to know about book formatting. Be sure to check me out if you have any questions. If you want to talk about it, just feel free to email me. If you are intimidating about doing book formatting for yourself and just want to hire someone, I offer several different types of book formatting. I offer a level 1 format, which is a template base. You pick out what template you want, and I format your book to that look. I also do custom formatting. Now, I book out with custom jobs, so I may not be available for months. So if that is the case and you need your book sooner, I work with a ton of different designers who do book formatting the right way. I can help hook you up with someone who will do your book formatting properly. So reach out to me, order that book on Amazon. Again, the title is But How Does It Look in Print? And that's all I have. Thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to your feedback on this presentation.